Hello. I've been facilitating students and artists for 3 years, both within institutions, outside of institutions, and sometimes in opposition to institutions. And what I've learned is to believe in my community, not institutions. I believe in my community's ability to generate creative grassroots projects that can reshape the infrastructure of how our communities function. But how? Through cultural exchange and investment in people and their ideas. This is regeneration through culture. Everything we do is a byproduct of cultural exchange. If you post a Facebook video, cultural exchange. If you recommend a book to someone, cultural exchange. If you do a painting or a drawing, you're providing cultural exchange. But to take cultural exchange beyond the personal and the everyday, you have to give back space to the public. So what is regeneration? The action or process of regenerating or being regenerated. The formation of new growth within existing organisms. To improve a place or a system by making it more successful or proactive. So in essence, you improve a place or a system by new growth through action. So what is culture? The arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively, not individuals. So what is community? People living in the same place or having something in common. Or my favourite, a group of people who practice common ownership. This is what we should be looking to create, a family of cultural practitioners that exist in common space with the responsibility of common ownership. Now, before I go on, I have a disclaimer. So, regeneration, culture, and community are all codependent structures. They are the byproduct of each other, and when they work together, they generate value and worth. However, beware. Businesses that bank land and empty space and offer these as temporary spaces to local groups so they can receive a tax relief, and the community group may never be given a permanent contract. Beware. Institutions that are granted funding on behalf of the community but do not engage fully or democratically with the community they are meant to serve. Neither of these models generate sustainable growth. So what is public space? Wolverhampton here. Public space is space which is accessible to all people. This is your shopping precincts, your markets, your high streets, your playgrounds, your parks, your community centres. And all of these play a vital role in the social growth of an area. The success of public space has to be adopted, managed, and used by public. People make spaces. Successful models of cultural regeneration provide accessible space for the community to create cultural exchange and generate new growth through action. History shows us that the more we exchange, the more we achieve. So let's look at some examples. Now, this is the Federal Art Project. The Federal Art Project was the first major government patronage of the arts during the 1930s depression in the United States. It employed artists from a range of skills and backgrounds and worked as a sort of work relief program. It developed new audiences by opening over 100 community art centres and galleries across the region, often in places where art was unknown. This is because it worked on the principle that it was not the individual genius that maintained art as a vital functioning part of a cultural scheme, but it should be a mass movement. It was community that it generated. In its time, it employed over 5,000 artists, and wait for it, generated 2,566 murals, 100,000 paintings, 17,700 sculptures, 300,000 fine art prints, and 22,000 ceramic plates. To be used by the Index of the American Design, to be used by their state. By providing a stipend to artists, not only did this give a platform for many artists to emerge, but it also contributed to the regeneration of their public space post-depression. Some of the artists who emerged from this were de Kooning, Pollock, Rothko, Rosenkies, and Lichtenstein. Rosenkeys and Liechtenstein are represented in our own Wolverhampton Art Gallery, if you didn't know that. Our next example is the Turner Prize winners Assemble. Winning the Turner Prize in 2015, Assemble redefined how contemporary art was looked at by presenting 10 houses on a street that they had renovated and saved from demolition. Assemble is a multidisciplinary collective that works across art, design, and architecture. They work cooperatively with their local residents and community. They both make things and make things happen. Their studios are located on the former site of a school, which is, of course, due to be demolished to make way for a large developer-led housing scheme. But in the interim, Assemble's aim is to provide a core of common facilities where these artists can practice the responsibility of common ownership of their derelict spaces. Now, this is Set, based in London. They were quite recently in the news. Set offers artists studios and exhibition space from all mediums. They work with landlords of empty spaces, which can be offered as meanwhile temporary leases for not-for-profit organisations, as long as they can cover ground rent, utilities and service charges, and building insurance. In the first 3 weeks of opening a building, they had filled it with 50 artists. Now, running on a membership scheme rather than studio tenancy agreements, they can cover all of their core costs and opened another 7 buildings in 2 years, contributing to the development of many artists to showcase in top London galleries. However, these are offered on 6 months leases or sometimes rolling month to month, and artists don't know when they're going to be asked to leave. There is an expectation that artists should maintain and even regenerate and improve a space for a landlord who is granted a tax relief and may never give a permanent agreement to the group. Artists should not be used as meanwhile tenants, but as integral partners in the redevelopment of cities. Closer to home now, Wolverhampton Art Gallery and Studios Limited. And Wolverhampton Art Gallery was opened as a privately funded space in a disused warehouse in Chapel Ash. Looks a bit different. By providing consistently accessible space, the projects it generated and the communities using it grew remarkably quickly. So in response to this, and with only £7,500 in funding, we opened a set of artist studios in an unused solicitors building above a restaurant in a space that most people didn't know existed. In the first month, we had filled the 10 studios with a waiting list. In the first 3 months, the gallery and the studios were cost neutral, allowing for accessibility and inclusivity for communities to develop work for mentoring and showcasing. By making space accessible, we allow for the manifestation of human intellectual achievement. And we're very lucky that our building is on a renewable 2-year lease. Now, just this year alone, with space, not with funding, our projects include 6 West Midlands-based artists who are doing free residency spaces in our gallery, open studios, darkroom workshops, a collaboration with ArtsFest, collaboration with Junction Festival, a partnership with Strix Gallery from Birmingham, mentoring with Joseph Chamberlain College, film clubs, a festival in July that's funded by CBC, and many more things. Now, all of these models are funded differently, but the one that had the most positive growth and generated the most sustainable growth was the one that worked with its council to invest in culture within public space managed by the public. The problem with project-to-project funding is that it's tokenistic in nature and it doesn't address any of the fundamental issues. By working with your state or your council to provide core costs and space for the community, you allow for accessibility and inclusivity for the community to develop ideas into projects, not one-off events that have an end point and therefore remove continuity of growth. communities should have access to reshape the infrastructure of our common spaces. Now, the Cultural White Paper presented in 2016 said, any investment in the arts, however small, produced positive growth and intrinsic social and economic value. We can be those change makers that make those guidelines a reality. There are over 100 empty spaces in Wolverhampton city centre. Just imagine what you could do. Out of darkness cometh neon. Thank you.